Monday. Let's start seated tonight. Nice, comfy. Just things down after a full Monday. When we're using the breath to slow things down, we can increase the duration of the inhale and the exhale. We can increase the duration of the exhale in particular. Or we could take a pause anywhere within the breath. Right? We could take a pause at the end of the inhale. We could take a pause at the end of the exhale. And maybe play around with that a little bit as you determine what's the most ideal for you. Just taking our focus, taking our awareness to slowing things down. And let's give ourselves 60 more seconds here. And when it feels right for you, as it feels right for you, let's exhale, drop our chin to our sternum. And with the chin tucked, let's do a little lateral head sway. Seeking out that top of the lateral chain. You were in class yesterday. We did a lot of lateral chain work, but we didn't get into this kind of end point through the, or supporting the cervical spine and into the skull. So maybe just finishing off our work from yesterday. And one more time, two more times in each direction, whatever feels appropriate for you. Eventually, we're going to bring our head back to neutral. And finding that kind of neutral head positioning where the skull can feel weightless. That's it. Let's interlace our fingers and then extend our palms out in front of us. If this hurts this is too much for the shoulders, do the palms towards you, but let's try to get the hands away. We're going to work on the wrists and the forearms here. So if you have the palms towards you, you're going to need to pull the hands apart until you get that forearm musculature. If you have the palms away from you, then we're just squeezing the forearms towards one another. And we're trying to activate this lower portion of the arm musculature. If I can demo that a little bit better. So really working for this distal arm musculature, probably better than lower. And make sure that you're keeping that shoulder girdle in your awareness so that you're not rounding forward here, but we're staying nice and neutral. And then let's relax the arms and we'll take our chin up towards the ceiling. So palms up here, really just looking for this arm musculature to be at ease. And then let's add a little lateral movement here with the chin up. This will not be as long, or we won't be here for nearly as long as we were in the chin tucked position. But just a little bit of movement through the neck. Maybe one more time in each direction. And eventually we'll bring the chin back to neutral. And let's transition to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, paying attention to how the hands are resting. And then let's push into that finger mound and try to get light in the heels of the hands so that we can lift the heels of the hands away from the mat. And if we don't have that capacity in the arm strength, feel as if you would be lifting your hands away, right? So just getting to the point where the hands start to get light in the heels of the hands, or we're lifting up and we're staying on that finger mound. And release the hands all the way back down as the hands plant, sink back into child's pose. Settle your way back into child's pose and just think about the arms relaxing into the shape as well as the rest of the body. And we'll give ourselves about 20 more seconds here, just settling in. Eventually, we re-extend the arms out in front of us if they're not already there, and then we'll pull ourselves forward into tabletop, curl our toes underneath us, and lift our seat back towards down dog. Get the weight to shift back into the hips. Feel the hip musculature loading, and then let's walk to the front of the mat. And in this fold space, we'll inhale a nice big half lift, big flat back here. Think about the top of the head extending out and the gaze being straight down. And now sink your way back into the fold. So we get that extra little bit of hold there that we can settle into. Drift the awareness into the sacrum and really trying to keep that sacrum, trying to keep that flexion really compact. Roll yourself up. So we're trying to keep the chin as close to the body as is possible as we work our way into this top space. And then eventually finding mountain. Inhale, hands come together at heart center. As they do, make sure we have that nice solid weight distribution balance. And let's slide our right foot straight back and into lunge. We'll land in lunge and sweep the arms straight up to fully express crescent. And then exhale, hands drop, settle the hands, and then just a nice controlled step to the front of the mat. When you're ready for side two, left foot just slides straight back. We find our stability and balance, and then hands just sweep straight up, keeping this middle neutrality. Eventually, hands come to heart center, and then we just delicately step forward. Exhale, We'll go back to the half fold. So hands can stay at heart center. They can drop down, whatever feels most comfortable for you. But just that half fold energy in the back. And then we're going to lift to 3/4 fold. So more of that back musculature coming into the shape. And then exhale all the way into the fold. And drop into that full settling here. We really want to feel the full extent of the fold before we plant our hands, and we'll walk ourselves back into plank. And from plank, let's slowly, gently, delicately lower ourselves down to our belly. And from our belly space, slide the hands from underneath the shoulders to fingertips kind of underneath the armpits. So pulling the hands down towards the middle of the body just a little bit more. And then as we do that, the finger mound takes the pressure and the heels of the hands kind of inherently either get lighter or lift off the mat, right? So we're retracting those arms down and the weight is coming into the finger mounds. As that happens, make sure you have your quads flexed. And then let's take the forehead anchored and lift the tops of the feet. So quads are flexed, lower body is operating as one singular piece, and the upper body is kind of anchoring and also staying neutral. And then we'll relax and we'll slide our hands underneath our forehead for a little crocodile pose. Just checking in on how the spine feels as you settle, as you pause here. So there's this little village that's built around this tree. It's this massive, massive tree. The tree is known as the labyrinth tree. And almost everyone who lives in this village more or less despises this tree. It doesn't provide shade. The branches are too splayed out and there's just so limited foliage that it doesn't really provide shade in the summer. It doesn't provide any fruit or nourishment. And to most people, it's fairly hideous. There's this young girl who has always had a fascination with this tree. And when people ask her why, she said, not all trees should be valued upon, not all things should be valued upon what they offer. Some maybe offer more value in what they teach. When you're ready, let's slide our hands back underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. And from hands and knees tabletop, we're going to step our left foot forward into lunge. So we end up grounded lunge. We'll sweep ourselves up, grounded crescent. You can shift your hips forward here to get that anterior expansion on the right side. And then we'll float the hands back down to the mat. Curl the right toes underneath you, lift the right leg into runner's lunge, and we'll sweep up into full version of crescent. And then ground the right heel and open up into warrior two. Feel how much space you've created on the front of the right hip and really translate that into expansiveness. And then spin your right heel back up, back into crescent. Put the hands down to the mat. We'll drop the right knee, sweep yourself up into grounded crescent. Put the hands back down to the mat and step the left foot Back into tabletop. Curl your toes, lift your seat, find down dog. Release down to hands and knees, tabletop. Slide the right foot forward into lunge. Sweep up to grounded crescent. You can shift those hips forward. We're in a protective space so we can get that expansiveness on the interior of the left side. Drop the hands down on the mat. Curl the left toes underneath you. Lift that left knee. Find runner's lunge and sweep yourself into full version of crescent. From full crescent, left heel grounds. We open up into warrior two. This version of warrior two. Now we have a lot of this anterior hip space. Can you translate that into further depth of the shape? Really sinking into that pelvic bowl. And then left heel spins up. Crescent. Hands drop to the mat. Knee drops, left knee drops. Sweep yourself back up into grounded crescent. Maybe you take that hip forward once again. Hands drop. Right hand steps back to, right foot steps back, to mirror the left. Curl your toes, lift your seat, and find your way back into down dog. Let's walk forward to the front of the mat. Settle, breathe, be at ease here. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Yeah, beautiful. Nice. Settle in, let the head go. Let the neck get long. Relax the shoulders. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. And let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Coming up and into this top space, mountain pose. And settle here. Let the eyes close here. And just feel kind of the hips in particular balancing you in this shape. So enough engagement around the trunk space to be balanced over the hips. Let's give ourselves just 20 more seconds here and a static in mountain. The eyes open if they're closed. We're going to slide our left foot straight back into lunge. Ground our left heel and blossom open into two. Big, wide, expansive space. Pull the right hamstring back so we create that triangle leg alignment. And then rebend the right knee and take the right hand down for side angle. So right knee bends enough so that this hand positioning can be relatively easy. And that can be forearm to the thigh, right? We just want ease in the tilt. And then left oblique will draw us back up. Feel that core engagement. Left heel spins up. We're back into crescent. And this time we'll combine the hand drop with the step forward. So hands drop. And we return to the front of the mat. Rebalance in mountain. And then from mountain, slide your right foot straight back into lunge. Right heel grounds and we blossom open into two. And we stay wide and we stay expansive. Slide back into the left hamstring. Just getting that activation, creating that triangle leg sensation. Then we rebend the left knee. Left hand comes down into side angle. Thinking about that width across the shoulders, across the upper body here. And then right oblique draws us back up into warrior two. Right heel spins up, arms reach up into crescent. And we use that hand drop to step forward and return to mountain pose. Inhale, sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Find your way into the full depth of the fold. And then inhale to half lift. Think about big, long, neutral spine. And then we're going to take another inhale to that 3/4 lift once again. So really thinking about neutral anterior, neutral posterior in the torso. And then exhale all the way back into the fold. And really feel how that musculature just almost forces length into the fold. And let's plant our hands and we'll walk back into down dog. Make sure in your down dog that you get your weight far enough back so that the hips push away from the hands. Maybe the hands press into the hips. And then we'll shift forward to plank. And from plank, we'll slowly, gently, delicately lower ourselves down to our belly. Once again, we are going to slide our hands so that the fingertips and the armpits are mostly lined up, or roughly lined up. Flex the quads so the kneecaps are lifted. And this time we're going to take the forehead away from the floor. And as the forehead comes away from the floor, one of the biggest challenges is keeping the humeral head rolled back. You'll likely feel, many of us will likely feel how the humeral head is pushing up against that anterior musculature. And so you're getting this anterior musculature stretch, but instead of getting that from the shoulders, humeral head coming forward, think about broadening out and really forcing the scapula back and towards one another. And exhale and relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead for a little crocodile pose. And let's relax and breathe here into the space that we've already created. So this young girl would spend hours underneath this labyrinth tree, just observing the twists and the turns of the branches, trying to follow these maze-like paths of the branches up into what felt to her like eternity skyward. And passerbyers would frequently kind of comment on the fact that she was wasting so much time with this useless tree when there were fields to plow and animals to tend for. But she was never deterred, and her attraction to this tree never faltered. Let's give ourselves 30 more seconds here. When you're ready, slide your hands back underneath your shoulders. Let's press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. And set your tabletop position. So get that neutral spine, curl your toes, lift your seat, find your way back into down dog. From down dog, push into the handprint so that you can lift into the hips and create space and distance along the spinal column. And then let's slide our right foot straight forward into lunge. And as the right foot lands, slide back into your right hamstring for a little pyramid. So
we're creating a triangle in our legs, but both feet are pointed the same direction, straight forward. And then rebend your right knee. Ground your left heel and bring your right hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the right foot. Left hand's going to come onto the hip and then slide back into your right hamstring. So now we're creating a more traditional triangle alignment, or a traditional triangle alignment. And then start to lift your left shoulder up to more fully encapsulate triangle. Now bend your right knee and bring your right forearm on top of your right thigh. And take your left arm and extend it straight out to a little modified side angle. And then I want you to feel the trunk space, so this middle of the body space, and we're going to lift the torso up to kind of that 3/4 lift. So you can keep the forearm on the right thigh and still do this, or you can bring that right hand up to the middle of the sternum. But now we have a lot of mid-body activation creating this shape, and we're still getting the length from the hips all the way to the arm. And then relax back to traditional side angle. Spin the left heel up and plant the left hand. And reach the right arm straight forward towards the front of your room or space. Right hand comes down to the mat. Right foot steps back into down dog. Nice asymmetry here. Settle and wiggle. Create some balance. Then the left foot slides straight forward. Slide back into the left hamstring. Create our pyramid alignment first. Getting just another way to activate that left hamstring. And then left knee bends. Right heel spins down. Left hand comes to the medial edge, big toe edge of the left foot. Right hand comes to the hip. And then we slide back into the left hamstring. Then you can start to peel that right shoulder up for a more traditional alignment of triangle. Opening and distancing that hamstring space. Then we'll bend the left knee and bring our left forearm on top of our left thigh. Right arm reaches straight out. Fingertips extending away to maximize that space. Then we're going to lift the torso to that 3/4 lift. So there's more activation in the middle of the body. Remember that forearm, the left forearm can stay active. We're lifting that torso space. I might have misspoke there. And then eventually left arm comes back down. Right hand plants, right heel lifts, left arm reaches towards the front of our room. Make sure you keep that right knee locked out, so right quad is active. Left hand comes to the mat, step back into down dog. Huge amount of space here. We opened up so much of the body in that short little sequence, right? So huge hamstring openers, huge torso openers. Really feel that space in down dog. And then come down to hands and knees, and then sink back into child's pose and just melt back into this child's pose. Try not to let the torso go into flexion. So try to keep the back more neutral here, and maybe even walk the head or arms forward to help encapsulate the length you've created, so we don't just immediately compact everything up there. And let's just breathe into our child's pose, into this elongated version of child's pose. One more big full inhale breath here. Feel the lungs fully inflate, fully expand. And then a complete exhale where you try to completely empty the lungs and wring out every little bit of breath. Before you draw that next breath in, we'll slide our hands underneath our shoulders and we'll press ourselves up, or we'll pull ourselves forward and press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. Hands and knees tabletop, curl the toes, lift the seat, find your way back and into down dog. Still have all this length here. Make sure you get your hips back into the space. Feel the spinal column expand. And then let's walk to the front of our mat. And we'll inhale into half lift. And we'll exhale back into fold. Sweep or roll yourself up and into mountain. And now you just have a lot of space. So try to reorganize your mountain, right? Reorganize your stance, your grocery store position. And then maintaining the balance of that, let's offer a little challenge. So we'll bring our right knee up into a little half Karate Kid. And we're going to cross the right ankle over the left thigh so that we have a standing figure 4. And then from that space, don't watch me, from that space, let's sink our seat back into a chair-esque shape. And we'll just breathe here for a moment. Get that hip flexor challenge. And then we'll rise back up. Release the right foot. And reestablish our vertical stance. Reestablish mountain before we take the left knee up, half Karate Kid, and then cross that left ankle over our right thigh. Whole new body to learn here. And then once you feel happy with your figure 4, let's sink our seat back towards a chair and just try to feel in to that hip flexor requirement, the stability required from the hip flexor on the grounded leg. And then eventually, when you feel right, when you feel like you've had enough, we rise to figure 4. We drop the left foot. We'll sweep the arms up and overhead. So palms towards the front of the room, and then half fold, palms towards the floor, and then full fold, release your arms, release your back, release your hips, and feel how that hip hinge can work with all of the posterior length that we've offered. So this lateral hinge now allows for more unionization in the fold of the lower and upper half of the body. And really think about a couple of exhale breaths where the upper and lower half of the body get to work together with less limitation at the hinge, right? Not no limitation at the hinge, but less limitation at the hinge to just establish depth. And then we'll plant our hands and we'll walk back into down dog. Really pressing and extending that length. Again, down dog usually not nearly as limited at the hip hinge, but we have openness here. So think about driving the hinge of the hips higher into the shape, and then the hamstrings deeper back into the shape, and the spine more into that elongation. And then we'll shift forward to plank, and we'll slowly, gently, delicately lower ourselves down to our belly. Hands are going to stay underneath the shoulders this time. So traditional positioning. And we'll lift the forehead off the mat. I haven't given distances tonight because it's whatever feels appropriate and comfortable for you. Make sure your glutes are flexed and make sure your quads are flexed. And then with the forehead lifted, let's take the tops of the feet off of the mat as well. And let's breathe here. So a lot of musculature engagement, right? The quads are really active. The glutes are really active. The upper back is really active, but we're still taking that inhale and exhale. And relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead for a little crocodile pose. And really just breathe into what you're feeling, what you're experiencing here. When you feel right, your choice. If rolling straight over onto your back works for you, and with your setup, let's do that. If you'd rather reorient yourself so that you have feet forward, head back, or whichever, let's do that. But we're going to roll onto our backs. And we're going to let the work we've done on the posterior chain kind of just settle in for a moment. Broken record moment, but I just absolutely love this moment within the practice. When you get to be at ease against your mat and you can feel into the space you've created, the work you've done. Let's give ourselves 30 more seconds to appreciate that. When you're right, when you're ready, let's inhale and bring our knees into a bent position if they're not already there. And let's exhale our arms out towards cactus and start to let the knees explore some twist capacity. And as you're moving here, really remember or appreciate how much work we did above the hips in the torso spacing and below the hips, really focused on the hamstring spacing. And just offer some grace around the hips that are trying to do the translating between these two large areas of body that have been changed from your practice. Next time the knees come back to neutral, let's let them pause there. Bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. And then inhale your knees back to neutral. And extend your right leg down the mat. And pull or heel toe your left heel as close to the left glute as is possible. Arms are staying at cactus here. And then really just try to imagine that if your left leg was extended, you would have 2 fists or less distance between the foot positions. Right toes pointed roughly straight up. Left knee pointed more or less straight up. And then with an inhale, rebend your right knee to mirror your left. And we'll extend the left leg down the mat. Right glute and heel proximity gets increased. So just bringing that right heel as close to the glute as is possible. Left toes pointed straight up, right knee pointed straight up, arms out towards cactus here. Just using a little offset lateral expansion to bring the hips more fully into balance. And then when you feel balance left to right, let's retract both knees into a bent position so that the kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Pull both thighs in towards the rib cage, and then slide your hands down towards your ankles or your toe mounds, whatever is a more easy grip for you. And we're going to encourage the bottoms of the feet to come together and the toes to point up towards the ceiling. So from the ankles or the shins or from the toe mounds, encouraging the bottoms of the feet to come together and the toes to point towards the ceiling space. And then relax your feet back down to the mat. Arms can come back out to cactus. And let's let the knees start their dynamic travels in this hip torso rotation pattern once again. Just moving to search and seek out any stickiness, any rigidity, and to try to smooth that into the capacity for fluid transitions. So one day, the entirety of this village goes into a panic. So this dragon is predicted to attack. They know the villagers are all aware of this dragon's power, this dragon's danger, and this dragon's destruction. Every village it's ever encountered has been laid to waste. Next time the knees fall over to the left, let's let them stay there. And so there's this initial spike in fear that quickly turns to despair as they prepare to lose their homes, to lose their businesses, to lose their existence. And as people pass by one another, they're rushing around trying to get their things out of their house. There's one very consistent theme, and that is that there is no hope. There is no possible way to defeat this dragon. There is no military might strong enough, no weapon powerful enough. It does not matter. This dragon always wins. When you're right, when you're ready, let's bring the knees back to neutral. And then we'll exhale the knees over to the second side, the right side. And just settling into this twist side two. And so the young girl who spends her time with the labyrinth tree has an idea. She sets up this very intricate and very elaborate set of illusions using some cheap kind of replica costume jewelry and mirrors. She uses the teachings of the labyrinth tree to prepare a trap for this dragon. And when the dragon finally approaches to attack, she waits in the center of town, holding a pile of costume jewelry. The dragon sees her, sees these shiny objects, and swoops down to take them from her. And she runs towards this labyrinth of mirrors. And she disappears behind a corner. And the labyrinth takes over doing its job. When you're right, when you're ready, let's bring our knees back to neutral. And we'll pause here, ask ourselves if there's anything that might be beneficial, maybe a bridge, maybe a leg extension, maybe a shoulder stand, if you're so inclined. But ask yourself if there's anything that might perfect your practice tonight before you find your way into Shavasana. And if there is, offer that to yourself. And if you have everything you need, feel free to find your way into a shape where you can fully appreciate Shavasana.
And so the dragon followed this little girl into the maze of mirrors and illusions. And they're set up to lure the dragon as far away from this village as possible. And as the story is retold, the dragon got so lost within the labyrinth that it lost itself and never found its way back. And from that day forward, this little girl was celebrated for defeating the dragon, not through might, but by understanding it. We'll start to bring some movement to our fingers and our toes. Up into our wrists and our ankles. To our elbows and our knees. Shoulders and hips. Neck and head. Eventually, the entirety of the body will start to move. And we'll utilize that movement to transition ourselves from the shape we are in back into a seat. And in the seated space, our spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes close. And we'll inhale our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that for every problem, there are infinite solutions? Sometimes it takes just a subtle shift in perspective to get past the most obvious. And see how that impacts your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you. Love the heck out of you. Have a beautiful week. I'll be back on Sunday for a recharge. And I will see you then. Bye.